Councilors, if we can come together. This is the May 29th, 2012 City Council budget session, budget hearing. Tonight on the agenda, we have the Police Department, the City Clerk, the City Council, the License Commission, and elections. We'll start off on page 22 with the Police Department budget. Chief and Deputy Chief, if you'd like to join us. Police Personal Services, $4,234,686. Total benefits and stipends, $1,567,420. Total dispatch, $423,144. Total civilian support staff, $137,223. Total office and supplies, $37,200. Total training and travel, $38,000. Total vehicles and equipment, $234,800. Total building maintenance, $205,840, for a total police budget of $6,410,975. Chief, if you wanted to start off.
Just a correction on the FY13 budget. I believe it's 6.878.313.
Yeah, what'd I say?
You said last year's fiscal budget, so.
Whoops.
Oh, I cut that.
All right, yep, thank you. $6,878,313.
Right. Good evening, councilors, for FY13. This budget, as you've gone through it, perused it, it's clear that there's no fat in it. We are at what I would say bare bone minimum at 55 police officers on the street. At that level, we're putting 5 officers out on a shift, which is somewhat of a concerning issue, especially during the summertime when a number of things happen. It's peak time for officers to take vacations. It's peak time to take personal time off and all the other things. And we just put out a lean force at 55 patrol officers. With that said, in the since FY08-9, we haven't reduced services in the city, in the police arena, since I've been here and talking to the deputy for quite some time. We put out 5 patrol officers. We still maintain 2 school resource officers. We have a traffic division now with 3 what we call DDAC units, which are in essence traffic units, including an additional one is Paul McNamara, who's our expert in traffic issues in the city. And they've done a tremendous job. We've increased revenue for the city, as you noticed, through administrative fees and towing services, which brought over $100,000 into the city in a year's time, which is great work. It's something that was needed in the city, that regardless of what was said in the years past, the tow companies would charge a particular rate, and they would take all that rate. So the money that comes to us from the tow company has nothing to do with an additional charge to a person's car being towed. So with that said, I can open it up for questions. Like I said right from the beginning, that this budget, there's some reductions. The COPS grant that we had for the last 4 years, we no longer have that. That was approximately $170,000, $180,000. We get minimum 911 support grant for approximately $90,000 a year. And we've requested through the federal government COPS office, there's a new grant out that we've applied for 4 positions to bring our total number of patrol officers in the cities up to 59, close to the 61, which I would actually like to see in the city. That would give us the opportunity to have officers take time off and we have backfill instead of paying on an overtime basis. Because I know as this discussion goes on, we'll be talking about overtime, and disappointingly for us, the organization, with the addition of 12 new dispatchers, we haven't seen an overtime decrease because of issues that I'll talk about when the question comes up. But I've taken some steps toward reducing the overtime rate. or the amount, and that is in litigations right now with the union in the city, and hopefully we'll resolve that in the immediate future. That will reduce overtime spending, so we can add additional officers out there when we feel the need that we see some series of crimes or just the temper of crime increasing in different neighborhoods.
Councilor Bean.
Could you, Chief, could you elaborate more on civilian dispatch? I mean, could you elaborate a little bit more on civilian dispatch, where it's going, where it currently is?
Presently?
Where I last remember, we had civilian dispatch, and I guess we don't anymore. So I need a little refresher on where it's going and how what schedule is.
It's a long-term process. We had filled majority of the 12 seats. We lost one last week, so we're looking to rehire an additional person for that seat. The process they go through is really intense for a number of reasons. The most important is we're hoping not to lose somebody in the first 2 to 5 years, and we lost one immediately. So hopefully, as we move along with additional people, the people will stay, because it's a tough job. Stress-wise, probably just as stressful as a police officer's job out there. So we have a majority of the seats filled. Training is still ongoing. We have on the early night shift 2 trainees with a police officer on the early night shift, so that will end at some time soon. Then we'll have full complement as soon as we hire an additional person.
How many uniformed police officers are now dispatchers currently, let's say, this week? Or are there any uniformed police officers doing dispatch?
The only shift that we still have them on is the 3 to 11 shift, and I think there's 1 or 2 still assigned there until we finish hiring.
And those 2 will then be on the streets, or are they there because they're, I know at some point, sometimes if people are out on injury or disability and had limited...
No, we don't have this.
Okay.
That's not how we don't assign like
Okay.
that.
So these 2 officers will be back on the street
Yes.
Correct.
by...
Soon. We're expecting probably the first of next month,
Okay, and then it's fully operational at that point?
with the exception of one.
Right.
That just resigned last week.
Right. One of the positions on 3 to 11 is a dispatcher that's on a military leave.
Correct.
And I'm not sure when he's coming back yet, so that's
June.
kind of still up in the air. Is it June?
Yeah, he's coming back in June.
Okay.
So, you know, when you look at, even when we start talking about the overtime issue, is we hired a dispatcher who went immediately out on military leave and hasn't been here since we hired him months ago.
Okay.
So,
My second question, separately, you talked about fees and fine, the traffic violations being increased by the greater enforcement. The payment of those go to, so let's say someone gets caught for speeding in the city of Fitchburg or whatever. Those payments go directly to the city?
well, they go to the state and they come back through, I believe, Dick can say Chapter 70.
Who's responsible for collecting those, I guess is what I'm asking?
Collecting, we give a speeding ticket.
You give a speeding ticket, you give a parking ticket, you give tickets within the city?
There's a process. If somebody gets a speeding ticket, they have to go to court or pay the fine. If they don't, it's the registry that handles the, the process after us issuing the ticket. And that may be a warrant.
Okay, other tickets, the same thing? I was just wondering if we have outstanding...
We do. We go after them.
And a number of cities have best practices where they'll go out after those, either hire law firms or hire collection agencies to go out after those dollars. And didn't know if we're at that point, or are those numbers high?
Right. The parking tickets go back to the city, and the city's traffic parking gentlemen, they have a boot list, and so we work with them on that.
Do you know what we have for outstanding parking tickets, by any chance?
I would defer to... Yeah, I don't...
Yeah, I don't have that, but the parking revenues,
I'm more concerned about what's outstanding there. A lot of times, a lot of cities have a lot of money over the years, and I'm just talking, you look over a 10-year period, there could be substantial dollars that are out there that just haven't been collected because sometimes it's not as aggressive, only because they may not have the, but it may be something we want to look at, I'm saying.
We have 2 sets of license plate readers that we put that data in, to if there's any local residents that owe money on parking tickets. So if our cruisers drive down the street, it picks up the plate, there's an alert that comes out, we can stop and we tow the car until they pay the...
Or put a boot or something, okay. I just think as long as there's some way to... the third thing is, I noticed that you now have the dog officer under, is that new, or is that...
That's new,
Okay,
July
okay.
1st, yep.
I didn't hear you speak about that. And she'll be working under You?
The deputy. Well, working under the police department with
Okay.
the authority under the deputy.
She worked for me when I was a captain, when she worked for us years ago, so.
Okay. I mean, again, I guess my other thing is, fees and fines in that area too. I mean, we have a lot of dogs, and we have a lot of problems, and we out there ticketing people or fining people for these infractions and going after them.
Yes, we can do that.
Because it appeared like last year there wasn't much done with the revenues coming back in for violations and for ticketing. Maybe we didn't do that much.
Perhaps.
Okay. But you'll be overseeing that now? Okay, thank you. Thank you. For now.
Councilor Clark.
Mr. President, actually, Councilor Bean mentioned it about the animal control officer. I was just wondering if you lost a coin toss or something, because it seems to flip-flop every other year. But do you have any real idea why this should be in the department? Do you think it should be in the department?
Well, there's an enforcement, I clearly see personally in this city, there wasn't the enforcement being done that should be done with these animals. And I think we lost sight that there's a process we can use with the district court that we weren't doing it. So that part is needed.
Yes.
But I think the shelter, which is not going to be under the police department, it's going to be under the DPW, will stay there. So that's a good split. I just think it's, right now, it's something that, when someone calls up because a dog's barking at 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't want to tell the person, call animal control in the morning at 8 o'clock. We as a police agency want to respond and take some action. So I think that's a good thing for us.
It is. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Also, I wanted to thank you for your continued commitment to the school resource officers. I've always believed that those are two very, very important positions and needed terribly, so thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Saracen. There are 12 line items in this budget proposal that do not match the status C for FY11. Who puts these numbers on this page?
I think most departments were asked to provide the information to the mayor's
Why
office.
isn't
so
your office in charge of verifying and putting these numbers in this page?
I think it's a combination of my having the time and the mayor's office helping.
It's a big deal to me. It was a big deal last year, because the same thing happened. We as counselors are being given incorrect information. These are not the numbers that were incurred in FY11. They're not. I'm looking at FY10, they match to the penny. FY11 is all over the board. I have no idea why, and it's misleading, because it says that they spent things that they didn't, and in other cases it says that they didn't spend things that they did. I'm not happy about this. This has been the same since 2009. These numbers are not verified. They don't match what comes out of your office, and that bothers me, because this does not tie to what reality was last year. There should be no guessing on these. This is over 2 years, this is 2 years ago. And I'm not personally blaming you, I'm just saying, this is a problem for me, because this is not accurate. These numbers are not accurate for FY11. They're not. And I also question the FY12 projections. I've always questioned the current year projections, because when I see even numbers, I cringe, because there's no verification on a projected number. I have projections on my end based on data you give me through 11 months, and you extrapolate it to 12 based on the burn rate per month. Some cases that works, a lot of cases that works, some cases it doesn't, because things may be incurred in the last month. I get that, but I'm sorry, I have a problem with the fact that these numbers, in large part, do not match what reality is. I have a problem with that. It doesn't tell the full story. My question to you, Chief, is the fire department, I've constantly said, if you look at their budget reports for the last 5 to 7 years, they're a department that is stretched thin, you're a department that's stretched thin. They return back to the city zip. In the last 3 years, the department's returned $700,000 back to the city. Now, I'm not advocating you spend out of your eyeballs, but for a department like the fire department that is stretched thin, it's hard for me to understand why we have $700,000 returned to the city in 3 years only. And I understand that when you plan a budget out, things may not happen, there may be bodies you wanted to hire that you didn't hire, people might have left. I understand it's not going to be to the penny, but in comparison to the other department where they have nothing left, I mean, every year it's consistent, several hundreds of thousands of dollars left over, and I know that contributes to free cash, but it doesn't make sense to me that a department that is in desperate need of funds, as yours, leaves all that money on the table, if not for hiring for other things. Because again, the fire department has nothing left over. So I never understood that. Why is there so much money left over in this department every year?
I think there's a number of reasons, but I'll quote a former administrator from the police department, is that we spend everything. Well, under my command, we don't spend everything. If we have money left over, it will be returned to the city. If there's no need to spend it, and we can wait, we will. I just think responsible budgeting is a key to administrative. I've owned 3 businesses, and, you know, some days we have to give hamburgers out instead of steak, because we just can't afford to buy the steak. The reality is, we have one gentleman, Brian Rulo, that clearly looks, when we ask to buy a piece of equipment, he goes out personally and looks for the cheapest place to buy it, not the most expensive, good-looking chateau. So I think that's a part of it. But you also have to look, disappointingly, the dispatching line item this past year, we just couldn't hire the people fast enough. And we weren't going to hire people that came in front of my desk and the deputies with some criminal records and what have you that wouldn't be justified for the police department. So when you look at what we do, we just don't spend it because we have it. We focus on equipment, things that are going to work, and, you know, we have a large personnel that works 24 hours a day. Sometimes they get injured. We have to put in somebody else. There's so many difference than even a fire department. And I, you know, for all these years I've been in this business, over 35 years, we've always been like an apple. We're trying to compare the police and fire. That's like comparing the Chateau de Ville with, you know, Burger King. Yeah, I just don't think you can do that. I think we're different entities, and you have to hold us accountable to those entities. We buy equipment when we need to buy it. And, yeah, I'd love to come back and, you know, will $400,000 in our overtime budget cut it this year? We're going to try to make it cut. I don't know if it will, and we might have to come back to you there. But before we come back to the council at large, we'll make sure we look inside our budget and see if we have extra money that we, just because we're not going to be using it, and use that money instead of coming back for additional funds.
Please don't misinterpret my comments to mean that I don't want you to use fiscal sound practices when you spend money. It's always been a bone of contention with me that for a department that is in desperate need of funds as yours, a lot of money's left on the table, and I would prefer that it was strategically utilized above and beyond what you're already doing for other things. May not be bodies, 'cause I know that's a lot more costly than just 1 year, but there's got to be other things we can do. And it's a recurring theme well before your time. It's been going on. But, you know, my other question is on the mechanic line item.
Correct.
It says 0. This year, we've already spent $27,059. So, when I recall that the mechanic was reduced or cut, but now we're paying, who do we have on staff right now?
I've actually discussed this with Mr. Saracen about removing that position and placing it into a workers' comp status, because we don't have anybody in the position. That position is being litigated. The prior position is being litigated at this time. So, I don't know, I think that's all I should say about that, unless you want to mention something, Dick.
Yeah,
you don't
it's a
have
workers' comp.
We don't have
You don't have an active mechanic right now?
Deputy comes in each day, and I applaud him for doing this work, but he looks at the fleet every day for a couple of hours and see what we need to get done, and we've been getting through, and we've hired a DPW mechanic to come over on overtime for a couple of hours. It's helped us, and we outsource a significant amount of routine issues like changing lights, checking for brakes, and what have you. We found that's actually we've been saving money because we're doing it that way.
How many officers, Chief, would you say would be an acceptable level? I know you'd want a ton, but I mean, you're below the line, in my opinion. So what would be the bare minimum that you would need to get back to? You're at 55 right now. What would be a level that would be an area where you could say, all right, I can breathe a lot easier, even though it's not where I want to be, it's better than where I am now?
When you look at the rule of thumb is for between 29,000 and 42,000 people population-wise, that's 1.8 per thousand. We're close to that 72. I think ideally for patrol officers, if we had 61 patrol officers, when I first got here, 61 seemed to work well with the amount of backfill. We had enough backfill, and we actually at that time had police dispatchers. So with the addition of police officers back on the street, an additional 6 more officers, I think we could significantly take care of the issues that most of us have faced in the last few years, is the amount of time that officers have been given in lieu of pay over the years contractually.
So you're at 55 now.
55.
61 would be an
61.
acceptable number to...
For other things that would help
Right,
us
okay.
along the way.
So additional six personnel. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hay.
Oh, I didn't hear you, sorry.
Councilor Hay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, just a couple quick questions. On page 23, it's got parentheses and numbers for the positions, but it doesn't say anything where it says clerical, principal clerks. How many people is that?
We don't have that, right? What page are you referring to?
Page 23,
Yeah.
starts with police chief, then clerical head clerk, and then it's got principal clerks in plural.
6.
We have one head clerk and 2 principal clerks.
2 principals, okay. So the 2 principals split that 90,400.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then on the following page, civilian police dispatch, same thing, that is 12 that will be getting the $377,000.
Yes.
Yes.
And third question is down the bottom where it has animal control officer and assistant animal control officers. And then you have overtime animal control. Is that $12,500 divided up between the animal control officer and the assistant animal control officer?
Yes.
We're still talking to DPW about exactly how this is going to work out, because there's the animal control officer who works for us, there's the assistant animal control officer who is assigned basically to the kennel and doesn't really go out on the road, runs the shelter. And then there's a gentleman that works at DPW who's Susie's backup, so he would get paid if he came out after hours. Out of
So
the
any one of those 3 people?
Yeah, most likely Ms. Kowaleski and Mr. East from DPW. I think the woman who works at the shelter is going to be staying at the shelter. So
Okay.
I don't think there would be any overtime or after hours money on that job. But
Any indication of how that will be split up, 50/50, 70/90? I mean, when you have a big overtime number and it's divided by 70 people, it's one thing, but when you have an overtime number and if it goes to one person, that's a 30% increase if they collect all that.
yeah, she was. They have an arrangement about taking, so there's always somebody available. All right, so it's pretty much in between 2 of those, and we may, it's been 4 or 5 years since I've supervised animal control, so I don't remember, but it's a busy job. It's a really busy job.
Oh, yeah.
Not denying that.
And we may need more than that.
Yeah, okay.
I think an important thing, too, with the police taking it over, and now with the calls for service that come in and we log them, we're going to clearly see if there's been follow-up. So that might increase someone's position, I should say, someone's duties to make sure the follow-up's, timely.
Councilor Thibault Munoz. I guess my original proposal would be to eliminate the police dispatchers overtime and the animal control officers overtime, only because I don't want the dispatchers to take a life of their own and to increase their budget, and then certain people make a ton of money because they're sucking up all the overtime when it's, just something that somebody wants to make extra money as opposed to the need of the department, but you manage it I'm hoping that you can manage that with the minimum amount of overtime. I have a dissatisfaction on overtime towards dispatchers, because if you have any extra overtime, then maybe it should be an officer or somebody else that's covering that position with a different grade of pay or something. But I have a hard time with the dispatchers' salaries continuing to grow when we brought them back. And I know that the animal control officer has $22,000 in overtime this year. In the past, I just haven't seen the need to, I just don't see the need for overtime in that department, and I know it's for an on-call kind of a thing, but you manage it, it's your responsibility, it's not a lot of money, but I am dissatisfied. I just don't like the idea of overtime in those two departments.
I can answer that partially. The dispatchers, coming up with an overtime number for dispatchers is difficult. We wrestled with this for quite a while to try to come up with a number. The dispatchers right now, they're all so new, they have very little time coming. They only accrue vacation time by the month. So this year, there won't be a lot of backfill. But what we can't plan for is attrition. And that's what worries us, because we've lost 2 so far. It's the kind of a job where people decide real quick that they can't do it or they don't want to do it anymore. And they usually leave often without giving notice. It's only happened 2 times so far. I think we're very lucky this round of hiring that we've done it, and we have the person out on military leave. So that's the kind of thing that we kind of took into account when coming to that number. The animal control officer, it's going to be a learning curve for me all over again. I mean, it was 4 or 5 years ago that she worked for me, but I did learn some things about it. There are some kinds of calls that can wait and some that can't, you know, and so we're going to keep an eye on that. And now that there's a shelter person, the animal control officer won't have to be so concerned with that. Before, there was a lot of her duties were, a lot of her time was spent in the care and the housing of the animals, that she shouldn't have to spend time on it anymore.
Right.
I honestly think that the animal control officer belongs in your department. I know it's gone around and around, but if I was the animal control officer and I was coming up with an unruly pit bull or something like that, I'd rather have an unruly animal. I'd rather have a police officer behind me with a gun than a DPW guy behind me with a shovel. Okay, there's some things in that position
absolutely.
that are very dangerous, and she's going to face that every day. So I'd rather have the backup of the police force than the backup of the DPW.
Yeah.
Councilor Di Natale.
Mr. President, I couldn't agree more with your comment about it belonging in the police department. I have an issue with the overtime for the animal control officer position, because if everyone recalls, this year, or a few months ago, in finance, I think it was last year, the animal control officer was before us for funds for an assistant to handle day-to-day activity enforcement that she could not do because a lot of her time was tied up with the animal shelter. Forgive me, but we agreed to pay for a part-time animal control officer for 20 hours a week. I don't know why there's a need for overtime right now. I would assume if she was by herself, or the position was standalone, maybe overtime would be justified, but we hired an assistant to get some work done that she cannot do on her own because of all the responsibilities that the position requires. Why is there an overtime request if we just spent $18,000 for a part-time animal control officer? Why is there still a need for overtime if we added a second person?
Well, just taking over the budget, part of it, this fiscal year coming up, FY13, the deputy and I have spent hours over this, and I think it's going to be a learning curve for us. We're going to definitely put some a protocol together, so hopefully we will reduce that if it's needed. Just coming here, I've been 8 o'clock, and she's out, you know, the animal control officer's out there doing some work right now. It's nonstop. If we responded to every call of these barking dogs, we go there as a police officer, and the dog's confrontational with us, and it looks like it's going to attack us, we're going to call for animal control to get rid of the dog. And that happens quite frequently. this afternoon, driving up on Main Street, there's a guy pulling, he must have weighed 100 pounds, pulling a pit bull that must have weighed 200 pounds. And God forbid if that dog got wild, he couldn't control him. We would have to call for somebody for that. So I think as we go along, we'll know, we won't just like we did with the metal ordinance, we will look at the issues that we're facing and maybe tweak some ordinance that, if we need to, about ownerships of dogs and requirement of owners versus just the city side of it. Let's see if anyone's violating anything that's on the books right now and see if we can address the problem. But I think as we move ahead right now into this next fiscal year, we have to make sure that we take care of the problem also.
Now that the position's with your department, where does the animal control officer position fall with regard to a union? Are they under, is the position under the police union, or is it under, what union is that position under?
I believe it's the inspectional group.
Inspectional group?
Yeah.
So I would assume then that the contract calls for overtime,
Oh, there has to be
of course.
Yeah. I heard
Okay.
looked at that, yeah.
Councilor Bean.
Chief, good luck with it, by the way. I mean, when I was mayor for 10 years, one of the most difficult periods of time was when Carol Stacy quit, and Jeff, it was on the Board of Health, and Jeff Jerzik was there, and we didn't know what to do. I mean, as you know, this city has a lot of dogs, a lot of people who mistreat dogs, and that, and it was a very difficult time at that very time. My concern is now that it's under the police department, we may want to look at, and you mentioned enforcement, and one of the things I've noticed is that, you know, maybe we may want to look at how we enforce it, and particularly in some of the neighborhoods where landlords should take responsibility for the number of dogs in their home also. I mean, currently, we have laws, you can only have 3 dogs, and if you have 4, you have to have the kennel license and all that. You know, and I think, you know, we had to start holding some of these landlords accountable. You know, I've heard about some of the areas in the city where there's breeders, basically, and breeding illegally dogs and that. So maybe we may want to look at some of what we do with our Board of Health codes and sanitary codes, is that holding some of these landlords accountable for their tenants, if they're going to be, you know, having, you know, unruly dogs or a number of dogs there illegally.
We meet every 2 weeks with the public safety group that has Board of Health there, and clearly, if these are issues, we'll present them.
Good, okay, thank you.
We'll deal with them.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, councilors.
Moving on to page 4, city clerks. If it's all right, city clerk will just remain up here instead of going down there this evening. Legislative, total city council, 120,375. Total city clerk, 233,976. Total elections, 50,134. Total license, 8,950. Total legislation, 413,435. Starting off with the clerk's budget on page 6. Did you want to have anything to, we always give the department head a chance to talk first, so.
I really don't have any comments. Nothing much has changed. The only thing I would like to mention is I have communicated to all of you that our Assistant City Clerk, Debbie Raymond, will be retiring in January of 2013. So we wish her well. And so we may see some changes in that number there, and I'm hoping to bring a replacement person in late October. And I've spoken to the mayor about this and have some agreement with her to have this person around for the presidential election in November. It's a great learning experience that comes around only once every 4 years. So there may, I haven't worked out those numbers yet. But I'll be speaking with the Human Resources Division, and I'm working on that.
Councilor Bean.
Question through, similar to what Councilor Di Natale was talking about having information in front of us that's up to date in that. One of the things I noticed is that you weren't here, we had a discussion on legislative affairs. I went online to look at our ordinance to check on water rates, and it turns out that it wasn't up to date yet. Is there a way a way we can make our ordinance up to date online? Is there an additional cost we have to incur to have that? Because right now, how long of a delay is it before we're updated on the ordinance either by hard copy or by online?
Those are updated annually by our code publisher. If memory serves me, I think that ordinance was last year, wasn't it, that it took effect? So there's something wrong there.
Yeah, it's not in there because I
Yeah.
looked it up tonight and it said the commissioner was responsible for water
I heard
rates.
you say that, Counselor, and I'm going to check on that tomorrow because it should have been updated. We pay to have that updated through general code publishers.
And not only us, but I'm sure the public uses it when they hear things. They go online and check to see what the ordinance says in that. So
Employees
it may be
in City
something.
Hall use it too. Employees in City Hall use that also.
Right,
So-
it's a guidebook, and
It
at some point,
absolutely should
there's a lot of things that maybe should be deleted from it at some point, as we have more time in the future to look at going through the ordinances, a lot of old things that are out of date, I'm just saying that we may look at, but currently it'd be important to have the most current information about ordinances, especially when we're having discussions and that, so any way we can improve that would be appreciative.
Every year, the legislation from the prior year is sent in, and it is supposed to be updated. So I'll check on that.
Thank you.
Councilor Hay.
I just wanted to ask the clerk, and I can't remember, there was something a few weeks ago that you wanted or needed, and a printer, and you were requesting it through IT. Has that been resolved, or is that in this budget, or?
It's not in this budget. As a matter of fact, I contacted IT today to follow up on that. Now that we're in the last month of the fiscal year, I'm going to be looking at using up whatever funds I have left from the various accounts to purchase a new copier that has scanning capabilities. We don't have a scanner in my office. I think we're way behind the times. We need to have a scanner so that we can start filing many documents electronically. So I am working with IT on that.
Thank you.
Councilor T-Bowman, yes.
I know in the past election, I know the state put a requirement that a lot of things needed to be translated into, I think, Spanish. Where would that line item be in your budget, and, or is it in there? And do you think it's...
There's not a specific line item for translation. We will have our ballots translated for us by the state for state elections. We have state elections this year, so all of those ballots will come in bilingual. That is done for us. Pretty much everything else will also come in from the state, translated for us. Things that we have, other minor papers and things like that that we use, that we might put at the polls, most of those we already have translated, because we did that last year when we got that mandate.
Yep. That's what I was wondering, because I know I did some of those translations, but, that moving forward, I don't know if that's something that may change or that would need to be addressed.
Well, it's election-related only.
Right.
And as I said, the state will do that for us. They will send those.
And just also, I think maybe Councilor Bean may have a different link to the city ordinances. I pulled up the ordinance today, and it was amended and it was changed, so maybe you just have a different link.
Could have searched wrong.
Or, yeah.
That's interesting.
I'm missing.
Councilor Di Natale.
Mrs. Farrell, why is that copier not coming out of the IT budget? Why is that coming out of your budget?
I don't know. I'm having discussions with the IT department on that. There may be enough funding in the IT department to cover it.
There is.
If there is not, there is.
There is money available for that.
If there is not, I have made the offer to pull what I've got left and put towards that.
When was the need for this? When did this need arise?
We have been working adequately with our existing copier. We've been running up to the third floor on probably almost a daily basis to use the scanner up there. We've had a need for a scanner for a long time.
Has this been communicated to the IT department for a long time?
No, it has not. It has come to a head over the last few months, and I did start the discussion with the IT department a couple of months ago.
Are you getting responses?
I expect to get a response. I did send an email again today following up.
I would hope you'd keep us in the loop on how that's going, because your office, above anybody else's, should have a scanning technology for all the paperwork that goes through your office, and we have a line item in the budget for photocopiers, so I don't know why you'd be paying for that, but please keep us posted on that. Thank you.
Well, every one of our city council meeting minutes are scanned
Right.
and put into the computer for us to see, so she's going to go upstairs to get that done. Okay. Moving on to page 5, city council budget, $120,375.
I have no comments.
Advertising
Take
double?
questions.
Or is that number from
That number is similar to what was budgeted for fiscal year 12 that we are in now.
because that says $7,000.
Right, that's the estimate of what we will spend. That is not what was budgeted. The office supplies account is more than what was budgeted because I'm anticipating making a contribution to that scanner copier. So I've estimated that that will be higher. The bottom line in the expenses is the budgeted amount. I expect to expend it all.
Moving on to page 8, the License Commission, $8,950. Moving on, no, moving on to the elections, page 7, $50,134. All set? Thank you very much. Motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Our next meeting...